Hi, my name is Lee Mann, and I've worked and lived around the world. I was born in Hong Kong, but I grew up in Canada. When I was a kid, I watched my parents use the foods they grew up with to create connections in their new country. Today, I continue to be fascinated by the foods people prepare and eat and build a sense of home, no matter where they are. Food, food, food! More than ever, food and its preparation has absolutely saturated our culture. It surrounds us 24/7 with dedicated TV channels, best of lists, awards, endless social media feeds. In so many ways, for an enthusiastic eater like myself, it's fantastic. But the food news cycle can be too much, too bombastic, too loud. It's overwhelming. At the other end of food competition and celebrity sits a restaurant like Hoi Tong. Quiet, serene, discreet. It's the kind of place you could walk right by and not know there was a restaurant behind these closed blinds. In fact, in all my years of dining here, I don't think I've ever seen these blinds open. It may seem counterintuitive for a restaurant to hide itself this way, but for those who live in Hong Kong, the promise of quiet and discretion is the ultimate luxury. My mother was a member of a dining club that serves Shanghainese food in Hong Kong. It was by no means fancy, but it was a place of peaceful refuge in a city that was unrelentingly busy and competitive. Here, Chef Leung Yu Tong, or Uncle Tong, as his regular customers fondly call him, diligently and with little fanfare perfects his craft. It's easy to gloss over the incredible hard work of doing simple things well, but I'll tell you right now, there is absolutely no shortcuts in what he does. The food at Hoi Tong exemplifies the Cantonese ideals of restraint and simplicity. For the Cantonese, there is no higher cuisine than rustic farmhouse dishes and home cooking. The ability to elevate humble ingredients with seemingly simple techniques is considered the zenith of dining. The Cantonese love of home cooking runs really deep. Decades before North America discovered the secret restaurant, Hong Kong was dotted with these little restaurants that served sifong choy, or home-style cooking. I remember, as a teenager, being taken to one place near Hong Kong Central District which served Chiu Chow-style Cantonese food in a warehouse. You called ahead, you paid a set fee, and were told what the menus would be, but there would be no changes. I remember knocking on the door with my godmother, being quickly assessed that we were not the health inspectors, and then being guided through a warren of rooms and precariously stacked boxes to be seated in a small area with a few other tightly packed tables. It was fun, illicit, but most importantly, it was utterly delicious.
You know, I think going back, I come from a family of really good cooks, coming from my grandmother, my parents. So I grew up with really elaborate dinners where it takes 2 days to prepare, you know, like holidays, and those things kind of strike good memories. And they're very picky cooks. You know, my grandmother was super picky, but very good cook. She has a really sensitive palate. She doesn't like things overly salted or overly flavored, but has to have good balance. And I think that, for me, always carries a lot of weight in terms of what home style and what good Chinese food is, because I know I can get it better at home.
For many, Cantonese cooking can seem a touch austere, but for those who understand, they know that simplicity is tough, really tough, especially when your ingredients are humble. You know, I remember us going out for Chinese food really early on.
The first time I remember.
First time, and it was...
Sea Harbor House?
Yes, that's right. But, you know, and it was shocking to you. This kind of Chinese food was shocking to your palate.
It was new, definitely new. Cantonese cooking can be very austere, and people might mistake that for being bland. But you have to get to the essence of the ingredient, and any good cuisine does that. It took me a while to acquire a taste for it. Some of it I loved immediately. I remember the chicken, the salt-baked chicken. I think it was because it was more familiar to me, you know, in terms of Western cooking. And I could tell the difference in the flavor. It was so intense. It was just Not salty, not sweet. It was just savory, pure, beautiful chicken, like just pared down to its essence. It's about having something very simple and plain so that you can appreciate and taste the main ingredient, what the chef is trying to show off. The great thing about Canadian cuisine is the diversity. And Cantonese cooking, Chinese cooking, is part of that mosaic. But I don't think it has the same respect or value than some of the European cuisines, or even Japanese cuisine. And that's a shame.
It will surprise many of you that sweet and sour pork is not considered some sort of junk dish, but actually a dish that demands a tremendous amount of skill and effort. Good sweet and sour pork is about 1 billion light years away from those horrible food court versions, all day glow red, tooth-numbingly sweet. Well, I remember when we ate, I had ordered sweet and sour pork, and whenever I'm out with non-Chinese people to have sweet and sour pork, they're always suspicious. It's like, oh, you don't have to order that, you don't worry about us. But, I mean, this is a really different kind of sweet and sour pork.
It doesn't look anything like the radioactive orange stuff you get in food courts, does it?
No.
No.
And I mean, the cut of the pork and the sauce that they have.
Yeah, it's not sticky. That's what's so beautiful about it. This sauce, it's hawthorn berry?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's such a natural sweetness and tanginess. Let's try.
Well, I mean, it's for a young Chinese chef, it's a real litmus test dish, right? It's easy to make a candy sweet or overly appealing, and it's balanced.
But that will blow anyone's mind who's never had, if you haven't had real sweet and sour pork before, this tastes nothing like the takeout Chinese that most people grew up on.
Early in Chef Tong's career, it was an important dish to master. Balance is the key here, as is attention to detail. Hoi Tong's version starts with carefully selected cuts of pork, shoulder, near the neck, a cut that gives bite and character to the dish. The sauce's sweetness comes from hawthorn berry extract that Uncle Tong makes himself. Sharpness comes from rice vinegar.
Growing up, ever since I was 13 years old, I've ever only had jobs in restaurants, and for the first kind of 3-4 years, it's Chinese restaurants. And I worked in Chinese buffets where sweet and sour pork is the biggest hit. And you know, most of the bad sweet and sour pork are 50% batter and 50% meat, and that ratio is not right. You know, for me, it's all about the balance. For good Asian food, good Chinese food, it's got to be balance of flavor and texture. Sweet and sour, it's got to be sweet and sour. Come on, guys, it cannot just be sweet or sour. Sometimes too many people just put straight vinegar and food coloring. Too many people just do straight up sugar and food coloring. It's got to be equally sweet and sour, and the texture too. It's all about the texture. Very little batter, a lot of chew. For Asians, chew is great.
The pork is deep fried last minute to maximize crispness. The sauce clings just so. The contrast between sharp and sweet, the marriage of lushness and crunch, it's absolutely gorgeous, fleeting and magical. And the other dish that it sounds French, and when it comes out, you're like, well, where is the pressed duck? But this taro root pressed duck is a real surprising dish to me.
This is amazing. Yeah, I haven't had this one for a while.
But when you see it and the amount of work that's in it and the deboned duck that's at the bottom of it and somehow it's
and
fluffy.
The skin at the bottom of it.
Yeah.
I mean, skin, the duck, pressed duck, the whipped taro, and then this beautiful lacy, crispy crust. I mean, this is French?
Yeah.
French, yeah.
Well, when I saw him cook it, I couldn't figure out how they did that crust. And it just kind of comes from the taro. It's just kind of this thing that happens. It's amazing to me.
It's just taro that you crust?
Yeah, and there's enough layeredness to it and the right ingredient. It actually, when they fry it, that top layer kind of forms its own crust. It's amazing to me.
That happens naturally.
Yeah.
They don't add that on after? That's amazing.
Cantonese dishes have an exact moment when they are perfect, where wok imbued heat is at its peak. This is why the best Cantonese-style restaurants serve their dishes one at a time, so that each can be enjoyed properly. The meal moves with a narrative, with the lightest dishes being served first and never overwhelming the appetite. Starches at the end ensure you leave the table comfortably full. For me, the stir-fried milk dish is the most surprising item on the menu. Creamy milk, mixed with egg whites, and just a touch of starch, cooked until it's just set, made luxurious with fresh Canadian Dungeness crab.
It's a very, very complicated dish, and I think when you have it, all you see is the simplicity. But if you don't do it right, because the ingredients are so bare, if the seasoning is off, it just tastes really bland. But the fried milk there is just delicious. It's really well balanced. It's really, really hard to execute, and I think it's the hardest thing to execute simple food.
I've always thought the use of milk stems from the British influence in Hong Kong, but its history actually dates from an area, Tai Leung, a town known for its rich culinary traditions in the Pearl River Delta. Uncle Tong recalls how the farmers in the area used water buffalo for farming. And as a side product, when the calves were born, there would be water buffalo milk. It was a rare and special product. The milk beautifully high-fat, rich, and silky. Young chefs in the area learned quickly that ruining the milk would be considered a disaster. Uncle Tong started cooking while still in his teens in the 1950s. Times were very tough, and Macau and Hong Kong were still rebuilding slowly after decades of conflict. Uncle Tong became involved with cooking simply because it was a way to make a living. Cooking is an extremely demanding way of life, especially in a Chinese kitchen, and it requires the support of a family.
其實我太太同我咧就喺香港識嘅。剛啱我講過，識嘅時候大家個興趣好接近，思想好接近，咁就漸漸咧大家將個感情咧融合埋一齊。咁老實嚟講啦，喺呢度嚟講，我好多謝，首先我好多謝我太太，即係可以講話咧，而家成半個世紀以嚟咧，都同我捱苦啊！佢唔係嘆世界嘅喎，係捱苦。即係捱出我自己今日嘅工作上咧有少少成績，呢個功勞咧就唔係我自己嘅，有一部分咧都係我太太就帶俾我嘅。好多事情咧，佢係做一個我嘅幕後，可以幕後英雄咧就係我太太啊。
His progress was not driven by fame or celebrity, but by the simple necessities of making a living for his wife and children.
當時我哋喺香港做事，人工唔係好。如果去到日本咧，要做咧，係香港嘅收入咧3倍有多嘅。係啊，3倍有多，咁自己計住條數啊！我做一份喺香港做一份，啱啱夠皮。如果我可以能夠咧，將2份剩餘嘅錢咧，可以咧自己或者考慮下供下屋啊，做下其他嘢。咁果然嚟講，皇天不負咧，我都達成咗自己嘅願望啦。
So what's my personal favorite? I love that bitter melon omelet. It is such an unlikely dish, and to the Western palate, bitter melon is bitter. It's a hard dish to like, and yet that's precisely why I love it.
My all-time favorite dish there has to be probably the simplest, with just the bitter melon omelet. It's just the perfect amount of runniness in the egg, the quick blanching of the bitter melon so that it's still quick al dente, but the texture is there. And when you have it, it almost makes me feel like I'm a kid again. Growing up with my grandmother, I help out in the kitchen a lot ever since as a little kid, even shopping for the ingredients. She has to tell me that the bitter melon cannot be too light in color, cannot be too dark in color, cannot be too big, cannot be too small. Has to be a certain width. And then she even goes and tell me, the little bumps and wrinkles in there. She used to describe, has to be like, the bumps has to be the width of my pinky, not your pinky, but my pinky. And those are like the best. And that for me is like the old-fashioned Chinese cook talking. There's no way to tell you about it, but other just through years of experience. And I think Asian cooking in general is very intuitive. It's very difficult for people to understand the importance of bitter melon and bitter melon omelet, but I think when I had it for the first time in Hoi Tong, I fell in love with it.
So people are always worried when they go for Chinese food that something strange is going to be ordered, and I usually no, it's all going to be fine, don't you worry. But bitter melon is a difficult dish. for people?
This is an interesting one. I remember the first time we tried this, and I was shocked by how bitter it is. I mean, I love rapini. I love bitter foods. So it wasn't the taste profile, but there's something about this melon that it seemed to be just so austere in its bitterness. It's pure bitter. There's not much sweetness to complement this.
Right.
And I remember feeling, wow, that just like stripped my palate clean.
Right.
But now, I love the flavor.
Yeah.
I think my palate has adjusted over the decade we've been eating together. Yeah.
The bitterness is carefully tamed with parboiling, bringing to the fore a lovely green freshness. The egg mixture is beautifully cooked so that it has a creamy texture. Fried at a high heat to give the dish lightness, and then carefully finished so that it has no greasiness in it. I could eat wedges and wedges of it. The skill of Uncle Tom's cooking is that all the hard work is somehow hidden, that what you taste is the ingredients, but elevated to the best version of itself.
I think one of the best ways to understand Cantonese cooking is to try the chicken. Cantonese chicken starts with a beautiful free-range chicken, always a free-range chicken. It's a beautiful ingredient that is cooked without any embellishment, rarely even any seasoning. And it's just about the purity of that chicken. Some people might find that bland, but I think if you appreciate good ingredients, then you'll appreciate the way Cantonese cook their chicken.
In Chinese culture, subtext is just as important as text. For Chinese food, this means that the flavors come from within and they're inherent, not distracted by overwrought presentation or over-the-top spicing.
I think Chinese food goes back thousands of years. With any culture that has a rich history, it's very regional. You know, I think in Cantonese food, the focus has always been on great ingredients, good seafood. When you have good seafood, you don't want to overpower the seafood. That's where the simplicity comes from. You know, where my family's from is from the north, and it's very cold in winters, and we have a lot of wheat, and we do a lot of pastries and noodles and different things like that. But for Cantonese, it's all about the simplicity. It's all about how to represent that ingredient to its purest form. And it's difficult. I think it separates what a good chef and a poor chef. And I think sometimes when you look at any other cuisine, you can go and train for a couple years. You might be able to do different things with the right recipes. But with things that Chef Tong can do, his knife skills takes not years, but decades of practice.
Chef Tong made his journey to Canada, really, to ensure his children's future during the uncertainty of the 1997 handover of Hong Kong back to China. The quieter Canadian life appealed to him, and he found that local ingredients were easily incorporated into the Hong Kong style of Cantonese.
雖然自己識做，希望能夠自己可能嘅範圍之內咧，希望做到完美一啲，即係完美又冇一個準則嘅，係嘛？凡事嘅嘢做得出嚟冇準則嘅時候咧，交得自己肯咯，每一件事希望係咁樣咯。
As a chef who has traveled further than he could have imagined, both in terms of distance and professional success, he looks back and appreciates each step of his journey and his life in Canada.
嗱，原則上我入到加拿大係加拿大人啦，我哋有機會都要俾機會貢獻加拿大，但係香港係我哋長大嘅地方，係嘛？長大嘅地方人我就唔係一個好忘本嘅人。希望有機會嘅話，都有俾少少貢獻啦。不過而家到今時今日呢一刻都冇。咁而我哋嘅家鄉咧，我都有翻去嘅。我哋正所謂就要講一個生長喺嗰笪地方咧，講一句生於斯長於斯咧，我哋好懷念自己嘅順德，好懷念香港，亦都咧好即係好咩啊？對加拿大嚟講咧，亦都係好有希望嘅。
At almost 80 years old, he still cooks 6 days a week. It's grueling work. I once asked him why, given all that he has achieved, that he continues to cook. He told me he cooks simply because he is able to. He knows that there will be a day when he won't be able to, even if he wants to. So until then, it would be a waste of hard-won skill not to practice his life work.
When I see Chef Tong cook, I have a sense of envy from someone that's in this industry. Now, I've been doing this for many years, but nowhere near the years that he has. You know, he's been through it all, and at the end of his career, after he's been through it all, travel the world and do different things, he decided to open a small restaurant. It's pretty much a passion project, you know, to keep himself busy and to feed people. And I think as chefs, at the end of the day, we want to feed people. And you know, to see him do that, and you do not see him unhappy. Like he's thoroughly in his own element, in his happily cooking for his customers, his friends. And I have a sense of envy for that, like, because he's at the twilight of his career. He could choose to just, you know, relax, but he still wants to share his passion with other people.
If I were teaching at a cooking school, or if I were talking to young chefs, I would say, get out to Richmond, eat as much as you can. Try to understand this. What makes good cooking? What makes a great ingredient? What makes a great soup? These are techniques that are very valuable and should be understood and appreciated far more than they are.
我自己都好難答覆自己，不過咧喺我個人嘅覺得咧，即係自己做工作叫做有少少嘅水準可以供應到人客嘅時候咧，希望唔好浪費自己嘅心得，就係唔好浪費自己嘅勞動力，因為到今時今日我雖然一把年紀啦，我仲有能力咧可以咧就拎低隻鑊啊，做得下廚房嘅功夫。唉，自己諗諗，唔好浪費咗佢啦，係嘛？即係做得幾多就幾多啦，咁樣。
Nothing replaces hard work. The desire to always improve, to take nothing for granted. Uncle Tong works and works and works until his movements become instinctual. When he can tell whether a dish is good or bad, simply by looking at it. He sees no end to this journey of pleasing his customers.
For him to be able to open a dining room at the corner of a strip mall, the size that it is, you know, to have the kitchen as small as it is to serve that kind of food, goes to show you that he only had one purpose when he opened that restaurant, is to say, I just want to serve this food. And it's beautiful because there's not many places you can go where you strictly just go for the food.
And that, my friends, is someone who loves his craft.